Welcome to the Athlete Insights Podcast, hosted by Yash Pad Day, a podcast focused on letting athletes tell their journeys in their sport. This podcast is presented by Boxed Water. Boxed water is better.
Welcome into another episode of the Athlete Insights Podcast. Today I've got my guest, Zach Wall. He's the recruiting coordinator and creative content, recruiting and creative content coordinator, for Memphis men's basketball. Zach, appreciate you taking the time. I know you guys are probably getting into training camp now, starting to get things rolling basketball wise. I appreciate you taking the time and chopping it up with me, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's definitely getting to be that time of year where where it's about to everybody's about to buckle up and get ready for the season. So it's time to get everything prepared for the year, and I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to watch. As a Memphis alum, and we've known each other for a bit, but I'm excited to continue to watch Memphis sports and football, basketball, all the Memphis sports as well. So excited for basketball season now, which is right around the corner. But before we talk about your time currently at Memphis, I want to take it back a little bit. What kind of drew you to sport early on, Zach? What's your first memory with sport? I know I've seen you post on Instagram. You've been at Memphis basketball games over the year, and kind of where you are now and how that evolved, and that's been great to see. But kind of where did that love for sport derive from?
Yeah, like my family, like we've always been pretty big sports people. Like, my dad always, he always told me, like, you gotta watch Texas football. Like, I'm from Texas. Like, you gotta watch Texas football. So I would sit down with him on Saturdays and watch Texas football. And just obviously living in Memphis, I would go to Memphis football games. My parents had season tickets, like back in like 09, 2010 era. Like, so, catch my drift with that one. And obviously with basketball, my parents had season tickets through everything. Like, I've seen all the great stuff, like, in my life. Like, in my time period, I've seen a lot of the great moments in, Memphis sports. And obviously growing up, I played sports as a kid. So like sports it's just basically like been in me.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're working with basketball now. Did basketball kind of, was that your first love of sport? Was there any other?
Yeah.
Did you play a plethora of sports growing up, like you mentioned, or?
I did. When I was, like five to like when I was age 5 and grew up and was like 10, 11, I played baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went on to play basketball. I never really played football that much. Like, I tried it 1 year in middle school, and it wasn't for me. Like, I didn't really like it that much, but I love the excitement of basketball and just the up pace, fast, running around, things like that. So I definitely enjoyed basketball more, playing wise.
That's fair. Yeah, basketball was connecting as basketball was my first love as well. In terms of getting in to sport and get my foot in the door through sport. And talking about content creation, you are the content creative coordinator and the recruiting aspect as well for men's basketball at Memphis. When did that first come about? When did you first look into content creation as something that you wanted to do? Because you're a photographer,
Right.
Before you did football video, and we'll get into that a little bit more. I'm kind of asking on a broader level.
Yeah.
When did you really start to fall in love with that aspect?
Yeah. The content creation side, man, like, really just, it allows you to be yourself. Like, I was interning with basketball, helping with recruiting and stuff, like on visits and obviously like recruiting graphics and things like that. So, I had a great relationship with our recruiting coordinator. He's kind of the person that took a chance on me. Like, I didn't make graphics. Like, I knew a little bit about graphics, from football, like being taught by, Marcus Tompkins. And so I was a little familiar. And then he told me, just, hey man, like, can you make this graphic for us? And I made that graphic, and like after I made that one graphic, it was like they believed that I could do it,
Yeah.
and they kept giving me, assignments like, hey, like let's get this, and like that helped me grow as a creative and like really begin to start like finding my way around graphic design and things like that. So that's
Yeah.
something that I really appreciate.
Gotcha. And I ask athletes that I interview about their most memorable like influences or people that have influenced them in their sport. For you as a creative, who's you felt has really like influenced you the most as a creative? Is there a specific creative that you really look up to and really follow?
Yeah. It's hard for me to say like a specific person influences me because like um, a lot of people inspire me. I'll say that a
Mhm.
lot of people outside of,
Yeah.
and then what I'll say is like a lot of people that I follow on social media and I've had a couple of conversations with the games and things like that. Like those people, like they inspire me, every single day to get better because like
Mhm.
just like how insane people are. Like it just
Yeah.
always makes me want to continue to get better and perfect my craft. But as far as like inspiration wise, like or like influence, I would definitely say like
Mhm.
Marcus Tompkins. He from
Yeah.
the jump, like first time I met him and like just kind of being alongside of him in that room and going along with uniform reveals and just
Yep.
kind of always having talks and him always kind of you know, having
Mhm.
our backs and like, teaching us stuff and letting us, be us. Like that's somebody that, had a lot of influence on my life getting into this whole thing. So,
Gotcha.
and
And
obviously I'll
did you
say this,
sorry, go ahead.
I'll say this too, like, Cody and Amani are big influences in my life. Like
Mhm.
that's like creative and personal life. Both of them, they always push me to get better as, a human being and
Yeah.
also as a creative.
Gotcha. And Cody and Monty are great individuals. Just in general, like you said, just great people. Make for great and sport is all about. I say this all the time. It's all about relationship in my classes, building those great relationships. And Cody and Amani are two great individuals to really connect with and build good relationships with, which you obviously have done here. So it's great to see that as well. Did you? I know you talked about you didn't really have experience with graphics when you're at early on in your collegiate career, and you kind of grew from there. Did you have at the high school level? Did you have kind of like, for example, when I went to high school, we had like a journalism program where I did a little bit of sports journalism and broadcast journalism and that type of thing. Did your high school? Did you have anything like that in high school? Did that spark your interest in high school, or was that right as you got into college, the content
Um,
creation piece?
I didn't, I did not do a single thing at my high school for
Okay.
like photography, graphic design. I didn't do anything of that. Like I wasn't even thinking like
Okay.
my high school career. I wasn't thinking like I was gonna do like this wasn't gonna be my profession. Like I didn't even know this was gonna be my profession like my freshman year. Like
Yeah.
to be honest with you, like it just kind of like the year 2020 happened, and I'd say that in the kind of a down year in the world with so much tragedy going on and
Mhm.
everybody being at home and but
Yeah.
it's I found the love for what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Mhm. No, that's great to kind of see is building on kind of what you said was a down year, obviously a down year, all this negativity, and you were able to, again, props to you, able to find the positive on that and really build on your passion off of that. And that's kind of great to see in that regard. And I know I met you, and we talked about this off camera, doing football video at Memphis for Memphis football. So when you look at the impact that experience had on your career now, kind of how would you how much of an impact, if I may, did football video and the things that you did with football video, how much do they translate to what you do now and that impact there?
Yeah, they I mean honestly it it had an impact on my life, like for real, like just working in football, like for any students and anything, like you still have to show up just like everyone else. And like if you're helping out with athletic training, if you're helping out with coaches film, if you're a student manager, like
Yeah.
you have to show up and you got to put in the work just like everybody else. And like what people, obviously it's become more of a thing, but it's like people understand the roles that like these students play in their programs and like how much like you can make an impact on the program. And just, I think coaches film really just showed me to show up, work, get your work done and, keep things rolling. And, obviously it kind of taught me on a professional side, just being, a young college kid going into a football program and like, learning, respect and, everything else. Like I know there's a big rule with like no hats in the building, no headphones, like you're just walking around. Like, so that's something that honestly I do like still live by today. Like even at basketball, like I'll find myself like if I have on a hat or something, I may end up, taking it off just to like, not have a hat on, because those couple years of my life, like that taught me like a sort of respect, like don't wear a hat in the building kind of thing.
No, and it's great to see. And Corey Zink was the video guy there for at least my year there. I know Corey stayed there for a little bit before going, but there's so much I learned from Corey as well as just being a man, being a human being in that regard, and how you go about the process of how he goes about doing his job and doing what he does. And so it's kind of what I want to transition to now is, when I know you mentioned you watched the episode with our mutual friend Amani Alderson, who I had before. I asked him about kind of his process as a creative. So I want to turn that to you. Kind of what's your process when you get a project, and kind of how do you go about your process and turning something from something that's on paper into a stunning visual, like you have.
Yeah. I would just say like a lot of it is, communication between, everyone like at athletics, just making sure that we have like everything ready to go. Like, on a graphic, like I'll make a graphic and then I try to send it over, get it approved, and just kind of like make sure that there's nothing wrong with it, just so it keeps brand standards and things of that nature. And as far as like long form content, like when we pitch a video idea, it's something that it's like a collaboration. I'll look at it as, obviously it's a team when you come together and start making something. And so just as long as we can talk things out and, write everything down and see where we stand there. And obviously there can be, 3-4 critiques before you even get to the shooting something, or there could be, what people may not see on social is they see, okay, well, this graphic went out. Wow, that's a cool graphic. Like, but what people don't see is like that graphic could have took like 5 revisions off of just making sure it fits the standard and that kind of thing. So definitely being cognizant of our brand and where we want to go, and just kind of making things look the right way.
And how, because there's a lot of content that I see nowadays. The stuff that you put out is very aesthetically beautiful. Like your photos and everything are amazing in that regard. How do you, in a world where now there's so much creativity in videography, photography, how do you make stuff stand? How can you make stuff stand out from? Do you have any tips on that? Advice on that?
Yeah, it's really like, I've said this a lot and I'll say it again. Like you cannot be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
You got to always be experimenting with anything. Like, I like a couple of days ago, like the sunlight was coming through the windows at the weight room at Lori Walton, and I just decided to go real low light, but just let that sun like kind of do the talking in the photos. And I think that it showed the emotion of like the weight room and stuff like that. And it's just like
Yeah.
always like always going in and trying something new. Like I'll try like a different angle. Like I may go up top of the weight room and shoot down, or even at the practice, like on court, like I'll go to the catwalk and I'll go to the middle catwalk as well, just to like kind of change angles. And I'll go 24 to 70. I'll go super wide, and then I might go super tight with a 70 to 200. It's really just always shooting and experimenting with what you can get out of your camera, like with your lighting, and just basically trying to catch any emotion you can. And obviously, it's just, to me, telling a story with a photo is like one of my favorite things, because it's like if you could just stop a still image, but it speaks like 1,000 words. That just means something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you're big on the Sony Alphas, correct? If I'm not wrong.
Okay. I am.
Yeah. Well, Sony, if you're watching, get my guy an NIL deal or something.
Hit
hit him up with an NIL deal of some sort. The dude does fantastic work. And I'm not saying that just because you're on, Zach. I really mean that. You really do great work in that regard. And before we end the podcast, I always like to ask my athletes kind of what's the best piece of advice they've gotten in life, in their career, whatever it may be. What's the best piece of advice? So I want to turn that to you. You said, there's so many people that have had influences on your life, from your parents to, you said, Cody, Amani, being in football video, Marcus, all these guys have profoundly influenced your life. What's the best piece of advice from any of them that you've gotten that you could share?
Yeah. My mom always told me, like, when I was growing up, like in high school and things, and just always telling me to like never change who I am for anybody, for anything, for anything. So like, to me, that stuck out to me. That's always been my biggest piece of advice. And that's my biggest piece of advice to anyone. Like, never change who you are for, a program, a person, anything. Like, you are you, and that's what makes you unique. And that's why that has always stuck out to me, is just to always be myself, to be unique, and just have, like, I think that's why I love this profession so much, because like when you can look at social and you can see the work posted, it's like I'm not talking, but like my work shows you like my thought process, and it kind of like can speak to you. So that's why I feel like that's why I love just taking photos and letting my work speak, like on social media, for people to see.
Yeah. And that's so crucial sound advice there, in terms of, from your mom, that being yourself, being authentically who you are is that's what's going to move you forward. And I see so many people that, that I've known in the years in the past, that even now, that, they try to change the way they act. They try to change the way their process works when they get a new job, when they meet a new person, or whatever it may be. So it's great to kind of hear that from your mom, and kind of get those words of wisdom. And it's been great to kind of see how your career has progressed, and kind of how you've gotten to where you are. And you've gotten to where you are because of who you are, right? And so, if you change that, you're changing your whole identity, then it's not conducive to kind of what you want to do. And that's great to see. And so now I want to kind of turn the tables on you. Your mom gave you some great words of wisdom. I'm going to offer you a chance to give some words of wisdom as well. But, Zach, I want you to picture as if you're in a room with young creatives, or young people that want to get into the creative business, and sports creatives, young sports creatives specifically. What's one piece of advice or one aspect that you would provide them that they should work on, or like I said, a piece of advice that you would provide them as they want to progress into that career?
Yeah. There's a lot of things that I could really say, because it's it's big, like, your network. It's a lot of it is about like, who the people you communicate with, and just always constantly trying to network with other creatives, maybe learn something from these creatives. And, if you just take bits and pieces from, learning things, like you can go a long way just by like learning like what you can do in your, apps that you use and
Yep.
things like that. And really and truly, like, it's just like I was talking about earlier, like when you get an opportunity, like you go full head of steam and don't let up and just continue to push and try to raise the standard. Like, and by saying raise the standard, everybody says raise the standard, but it's like you're trying to raise the standard for yourself. Like at any point in your life, you're trying to always just raise your standard, and like you never want to be comfortable.
Yep.
That's another thing too. Like, I try not to stay comfortable. I try to keep pushing myself. Like I actually have kind of started taking video clips at, practice and stuff now. And like, that's something that, videography I did 3 years ago, but I wasn't the greatest at it, but I'm kind of trying to pick it up a little bit, during practice, and just kind of learn a little bit more about, videography to just keep expanding my, horizon. And just, and that's another thing. What I was about to say is just be knowledgeable of everything. Just continue to learn, continue to, learn new things, try the new things, and always experiment. And again, like I said, just be yourself and show up and do the work.
And don't, and like you mentioned before, don't be afraid to fail too. That's the key in that one. And those are great pieces of advice there from you, Zach. And it's great to see kind of where your career has taken you so far. Like I said, I've always kept tabs since I've met you on your career through your social media and through your lens. I'll continue to follow. Like I said, being a Memphis alum, love keeping up with Memphis sports. So I'll be sure to follow you guys through this season and next season and forward and going forward. So I appreciate you coming on, and that's all the time we have for this episode of the Athlete Insights podcast. Again, Zach, appreciate you coming on. Like I said, I'll have your social media handles on the video so you can follow Zach as he starts his basketball season now, moving forward into October. I know you're getting busy. I'm excited to see kind of your photos and the stuff that you put up on Instagram. Has been great. Like I said, and so excited to see more of that. Like we said, Sony hit my guy up with an NIL deal. But again, we'll have your stuff on social media on the video. We'll have my social media, and then you can follow our podcast as well on my podcast, as well on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. I'll post that on there as well, and then also on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, pretty much anywhere you can get podcasts, you'll find this one. So, Zach, appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.